you sexy bitches? My name is Sterling and welcome to the channel. This is where I like to read some of the best and most upvoted stories on Reddit. And today we're going to be getting into some stories about Kevin. This is where Kevin gets fired after one day on the job because he fed broken glass to customers in pastries. And like the rest of these stories have just got me scratching my head of how do people like this even live? How do they survive? How are they still on this planet? How have they not been perished by Darwinian theory? But they are here, so we're just gonna get into this. This is by Laser Moon Centaur. I fired Kevin after one day of amazing stupidity. Probably one of the stupidest people I've ever met. He was a 26-year-old male and turned up an hour and a half late for the first day. He was brought in by his mom, which I thought was kind of odd for a grown man. I'd let that slide, but things just got worse. It was a small roadside eatery slash cafe, so I thought I'd get him started on small duties to ease him into the way of this place. I asked him to put new toilet paper in the toilets. A minute later, I hear him yelling, "OP! It won't fit on the toilet roll holder!" I'm like, what? That's a pretty simple thing. He calls out again, so I tell him to bring it to me so I can show him. He's carrying a roll of paper towel. It's almost 3 times the length of the toilet paper holder. "Kevin," I say, "that is paper towel." "No, it's not." "Yes, it is. Have you ever seen toilet paper that big in your life?" No. "Right. Furthermore, and probably more perplexing, can you not see that this massive roll couldn't possibly fit on this small bar?" "Yeah, I thought that was odd." Oh boy. Well, the day goes on, and after the kitchen is pretty much closed except for the pre-cooked baked goods, I get him to give a general clean and ask to make sure he wipes down all the benches. I leave him to it as I assume he's doing fine. Wrong! One of the other staff comes and says we've run out of toilet paper, and I'm like, what? That's not possible. Sure enough, all the packets are torn open and empty except the rolls on the holders. At this stage, I realize there can only be one culprit, and I call Kevin over. "Did you do something with the toilet paper?" "What the fuck is with this guy and toilet paper?" "Yes, I used it to wipe down the benches in the kitchen." "You used 8 rolls of TP to wipe down the benches in the kitchen. Why are you using toilet paper to wipe down benches?" "I don't like using dishcloths." "Who taught you to wipe down benches with toilet paper? Have you ever seen anyone wipe down benches with toilet paper?" "The cloth was dirty and I didn't want to clean it out." By this stage, I'm thinking, day's nearly over, just let it go, and I'm sure it'll work out fine. Yeah, you know what's coming. Kevin strikes again, and this time, it's beyond moronic. I've got him serving customers pastries and the like, because all you have to do is take it out of the glass bay, put it on a plate, and give it to them. He doesn't even have to ring it up, just pop it on a plate and give. Well, one of the customers orders 3 scones with jam and cream. He's behind the counter doing his thing, and I have a little peek and see. Yes, he's cut them in half and managed to put jam and cream on them. About a minute later, the customer brings the scones back up to the counter. There's something really hard in these scones. I bit down, and it was like crunching on rock or something. I, of course, am puzzled. "Oh, I'm really sorry about that," when Kevin cuts in. "It's probably just the seeds in the jam." Now, there's something about the way that he says this that makes my alarm bells ring. "Show me what you put into these scones," and I start marching towards the prep bench. Sitting on the bench is the bowl of whipped cream, and next to it, in a plastic bag, is a broken glass jar which contains jam. The motherfucker is feeding the customers broken glass. "I didn't think it would be a big deal." Are you fucking insane? I grab the plate and most of the uneaten glass and a few scones. How is anyone supposed to eat this? To my utter amazement, he proceeds to eat them in front of me, all while crunching on glass, flinching every time he does. I'm paralyzed, dumbfounded. When he finishes eating them, he says, "Do you think I should go to the hospital?" You're fired. How can you be this stupid? Like, feeding customers broken glass because you didn't want to get in trouble for breaking a $3 bottle of jam. Ooh, and that jam was probably already half empty. Fuck, you're so goddamn dumb. Like, I can't believe people like this even exist. Our next story is by Dada Laughing. My friend tries to divorce Kevin. When we were all young and dumber, one of my closest friends married the craziest Kevin I've ever met. My friend had just come off a very bad relationship that she'd been certain was going to end in marriage. when in reality, the guy was cheating on her while using her to support his wannabe golfer pro existence, then dumped her when someone with more money came along. So she was in a bad place. A few months later, Kevin appears. The first time I met Kevin was when the two of them showed up at my apartment to announce their engagement. Since I'd met the previous guy that she was seriously dating just a month before, I know they couldn't have been seeing each other for very long. Turns out Kevin proposed 5 weeks later after their first date. Maybe she was a bit of Kevin too for saying yes at that point, but like I said, bad place. It's hard for me to accurately describe Kevin without dipping into being mean, because I never liked him from the first meeting. It was like he really wanted to be one of those hyper-masculine manly men, but didn't quite know how. He liked to take any opportunity to bring up conversation that he was a black belt. I remember the first time that he said he was, because I asked, "Oh yeah, in what?" And he looked at me like I was an idiot. "In martial arts?" Oh, right, of course. He also liked to talk at length at how much he worked out. Turns out, he didn't actually work out at all. He liked to think of himself as a car guy because he had a sports car he couldn't afford and treated it like his baby. He didn't actually know anything about cars, but he had one, so car guy. But the thing that really got up my nose about the guy was that he prided himself on how very smart he was. He'd make the most outrageous claims with the most pig-headed certainty. He just knew these things were true. And if you disagreed, even if you showed actual physical proof that he was wrong, he'd just condescendingly tell you that you don't understand these things like he did and go on with his idiocy. As an example, he once declared that you cannot break the law at night. What exactly does that mean? We still don't know. He wouldn't elaborate. As a second example, he had trouble getting a fire going in his fireplace when he was home alone one day. His solution? Mix up some homemade napalm from a recipe he found on the internet. It was a huge disaster, set the kitchen on fire. Luckily, my friend arrived home in time to grab the fire extinguisher. Yet he insisted doggedly that he knew what he was doing, and really this was the best way to get the fireplace going. And obviously she didn't understand because she didn't know as much about this stuff as he did. Sorry, I know there's a lot of setting the stage. One last important thing to know about Kevin before we get round to the divorce as I promised. Kevin was a religious nut. I don't mean he was crazy because he was religious. I've known many wonderful, intelligent, religious people in my lifetime. Kevin was a crazy person who used religion as his MO. He would randomly proclaim, "The Bible says," to support whatever other crazy thing he'd said. Most people let him get away with it because, hell, the Bible is really long and says a lot of crazy shit. Who could say that? Somewhere in there, it didn't actually say whatever insane thing he was claiming. And besides, who wants to confront crazy? Even when the claim was something crazy like, "The Bible says the birds are the devil." Yes, this is a thing that he said one day when he was angry at birds for some reason. I was raised going to church twice a week, once upon a time. So I knew a bit about that particular book, and I had a pathological need when I was younger to call people out on their bullshit. So we often butted heads. Unsurprisingly, when confronted, Kevin could never actually tell you in the Bible where it says you shouldn't take the first slice of pizza. Yup, he said that too, but it didn't decrease his certainty that it was there. So as anyone but the two of them could have predicted, the marriage didn't last. He became increasingly erotic, forbidding her from speaking to friends, including me, because the Bible says so, hitting her because the Bible says she has to do whatever he says, and that he's allowed to beat her if she doesn't. Stuff like that. So she left. And here is where the wickedest Kevining begins. She gets a lawyer to initiate divorce proceedings, and the first thing that comes up is the house. They bought the house from his parents. More precisely, she bought the house from his parents. He had terrible credit. As a result, his name wasn't on anything related to the house. He also had no job, meaning he never made a single payment on the house. As far as she saw it, the house was hers. His mother, who came into town to support her son through this misfortune, didn't see it that way. They declared that the house still belongs to the mother, and they threw out all of my friend's stuff onto the lawn. Friend's lawyer gets a preliminary hearing set up to determine the initial dispersion of important stuff like the house, at least until the divorce proceedings get all sorted. So my friend's lawyer says to Kevin, "Have your lawyer contact me to set up a meeting before the hearing." A meeting is set up, and who arrives at his office but Kevin, dressed in jeans and a windbreaker, claiming to be Mr. Steele, the lawyer. I shit you not. He decided he'd be his own lawyer and call himself Mr. Steele. Obviously, not his name. I don't know how the initial meeting went, but when the time for the hearing came, Kevin was once again acting as his own attorney. This time, I can only assume he wasn't working under the pseudonym. Keep in mind, the rest of this is totally going off the story to me immediately after the hearing. Kevin and his mother arrived 20 minutes late, not at all dressed for court, casual jeans and a shirt. The first thing he says when he walks in is, "Can I approach the bench?" "Why?" the judge asked. Because I have some receipts? So friend gets called to the stand. Her lawyer asks a bunch of questions illustrating just how crazy Kevin is and how bad things have gotten about the house and stuff. Then Kevin, since he's the lawyer, gets to cross-examine. His first question: is it true that you were beaten as a child? Her lawyer: objection. The judge: sustained. The question had nothing to do with anything. Other questions include: is it true that you were seeing a psychiatrist and on medication for depression? No, it's not true. She'd never seen a mental health professional. Not sure if he thought he might trick her up into lying on that one, or if he was so crazy that he actually thought it was true. He asked a bunch of other ridiculous questions, which the lawyer let him ask because they were completely out of nowhere and just helped prove to the judge how nuts he was. Then he takes the stand. Her lawyer gets him to admit to pretty much everything that they said he did, because it was all true. But he refuses to give specific answers to some of the more serious questions. Not no, just doesn't want to give specifics. Then he gets to make a statement. His statement is how he doesn't want a divorce, and also she was abusive to him, such as pinching him once when they were on the highway. Also, the Bible says that she's his wife, so she has to do whatever he wants, and that divorce is bad. How can the judge make him get a divorce when the Bible says not to? Apparently, he went on this vein for a while. She just gave me a couple of the highlights. Needless to say, the initial hearing didn't go his way. She ended up getting the house in the short term and a protective order against him after he admitted in court to the violence against her. The Bible says it's okay though. After this, he would drag his feet at every point of the process. For more than 6 months, he wouldn't show up to things, or would refuse to sign things until the last possible moment. He moved to a different city and apparently joined the Army Reserve. When friend found out about this, her lawyer contacted someone there to point out he wasn't allowed to be around weapons or something like that because of the protective order. Legal stuff that goes over my head. The lawyer even contacted him and offered to drop the protective order so he could stay in if he just agreed to finish the divorce proceedings in a timely manner. Kevin refused. In the end, he got pretty much nothing and quietly disappeared. That is about the most appropriate thing that he could have done, is just disappeared, gone under a rock, not bothered another damn person, because holy crow. Like, I work at a car wash and there's some freaking Kevins that come on there, and I can't imagine being married to one. Good God. Our last story is by Schattentoster. Kevina thinks she's bilingual. Austrian here. My sister used to take in couch service from all across the world. Most were lovely fellas with interesting stories to tell. But one time, we hit the jackpot. We got a set of 4 American stereotypes. The ones that I used to think were only real in movies. And one of them was a real airhead cheerleader who was one hell of a pain. Since they're not relevant to the story, I won't go into detail about their rude, obnoxious Kevina behavior during the days leading up to the event. But let me tell you, at this point, even her friends were done with her. It's New Year's Eve. The couch service decided to stay with us instead of going out into the city, and my sis and I go about our New Year's celebration the same way we always do. Having fondue, dancing to the Blue Danube, and watching Dinner for One. Midnight comes and goes within less than 5 minutes. Kevina takes her laptop into the other room to do voice call with her parents, leaving the door open. And off she goes, complaining loudly about how my sister and I are embarrassing as fuck. Literally how she pronounced it. How the Austrian food we had sucked. As much as I would love to claim fondue as our own cuisine, the French would likely be opposed. How the mountains looked fake, and whatnot. My sister and I were in the living room with the others, perfectly able to hear every single word while her friends turned red as tomatoes and started to give us apologetic looks. Cue Kevina's return, marching into the living room with the carefree attitude of an ignorant dumbass. Kevina's friend: Kevina, we heard you. All of us. Kevina: so what? I was talking American. My sister and I looked at each other and started laughing so hard, it took us a few minutes to calm down. She had talking to us every single day in English, but somehow that was different in Kevina's world. Her friends apologized profusely. Kevina did not, because she just couldn't believe, even when we told her, that yes, we do understand American. I wonder what it was that made your sister no longer offer her couch up to people traveling the world. Was it this particular Kevina that she was just like, no, I just can't deal with any more idiots in my house. This was the last straw and I'm just fucking done. And I really like how OP and the sister just blew up laughing when she was like, I was speaking American. Like, That is not bilingual, madam. You are a freaking idiot. That was Stories About Kevin. Hit the subscribe button and the bell to see more videos. Later, everyone.
Superstars feeling like a pop star.
Oh, man, that fucking good.